bold is one of those judgments you pass in retrospect. While you're doing it, the judgment everybody passes is stupid. So when everybody's running one way and one guy's running the other way, you say, look at that stupid guy. And only like 5 years later, you say, look at that bold guy. So stupidity is, boldness is stupidity 5 years later in some cases.
Mahesh Murthy is an investor, marketeer, writer, speaker, and entrepreneur. He is the Chief Executive Officer of digital agency Pinstorm, managing partner of early stage fund Seed Fund, and founder director at Exseed Space, India's first and only private space company that builds satellites. I wish you enjoyed this conversation.
I was reading an article about you, not an article, basically a biography about you, and it said that you are a college dropout. It said that you started your career as a door-to-door salesman for a vacuum cleaner, right? On your LinkedIn page says you have launched Amazon. You're a marketer, investor, entrepreneur. So it's an inspirational journey for people like us, I'm sure you've gone through a lot. So can you please share in your words your journey to our listeners?
Perhaps some context and background might set things right. So in terms of my origins, I come from a very orthodox South Indian Tamilian Brahmin family, and Tamrams as we're called, and we're kind of well known apparently for academics and stuff. And certainly my dad was quite fixated on that. And it was one of those things where you're supposed to come in the top three in class, or ideally top number one, and so on and so forth, right? So I did pretty okay. I actually, it was one of those things where I think I remember once coming home with 97 on 100 in maths, really being happy, and my dad whacked me 3 times for the 3 marks I didn't get, right? So anyway, I remember I think I topped the state at my 10th, and did pretty well in my 12th too, and got into engineering, so on and so forth. It was one of those pretty logical things. We didn't have much choice back then. I think the entire logic was that if you're good at science and math, you're lucky because you get to choose between engineering and medicine. If you're good at math but not science, you go to economics or commerce. If you're good at science but not maths, you become a doctor. And not good at maths, not good at science, we need to find you somebody rich to marry. So those were the only kind of options that we had back then. Anyway, I think I was okay in math and science. I was given a choice, and I kind of, without really thinking too much, took engineering, only because I figured that medicine was not for me, not from any particular love of one or the other. Uh, got into engineering, and then figured out about a year into it that I had zero interest in the stuff that was being taught. I had no interest whatsoever, right? So this was crazy. And I think it was one of those random days when I was sitting down listening to my uncle's record player, and he had this album, or actually there was this album at home which was Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, and I was playing this one song time again and again. It was if you know the song, it goes something like, taking away the moments that make up a dull day. You fritter and waste your hours in an offhand way, kicking around on a piece of ground in your hometown, uh, you know, and so on and so forth. And it was all about, hanging on in quiet desperation. That's the English way. And I said, no, that's the Indian way. So kicking around in your hometown, waiting for something. That was exactly me. I was in a small town, Hyderabad. I didn't know what to do. And I said, you know what? I don't know what I want to do, but I know what I don't want to do. And I don't want to do college, right? So, and actually that kind of thinking has driven a lot of what I've done, which is I still don't know what I want to do in life. I don't have any particular ambition, a sharp ambition, but I know what I don't want to do. Anyway, so I decided to stop going to college, and very quickly my dad kind of figured out I wasn't going to college, and being the good authoritarian Tambram man that he was, he pretty much came back and said, "All right, here's a choice. You live in my four walls, you follow my rules, and my rules are you go to college." And that's about the only choice I had. I left home that day, and I just had some money from one of my NTS scholarships, and I didn't know what to do. So I went and booked myself a room at a sleaze bag cheap hotel for 50 rupees a night. And I found a job. The only job that was available to a non-graduate was a developer salesman's job, and that's what I found the next day. Uh, I still am not a graduate, so I do tell my dad, yes, you wanted me to go to IIT, and I do go to teach there, but I'm sorry, I'm still a class 12 pass. Anyway, so the only job I got was as a door-to-door salesman selling vacuum cleaners, and I was terrible at it. But it taught me. It taught me how to understand people and how to understand selling and marketing. So that was my MBA. And, And ever since I kind of figured out what I was reasonably good at was communicating and persuading and marketing. So, in some ways, then I moved to advertising, which is like salesmanship in print, right, or on TV. I learned to write ads, create ads, and I worked in Hyderabad, I worked in Bombay, I worked in Delhi, and I did well. I went to Hong Kong. I then was a regional creative director at Ogilvy, the largest agency in Asia, doing some stuff. Pretty like okay, advertising career, won some awards, blah blah, all that stuff, direct some nice stuff. And my first kind of bit of deviation or aberration was I helped I'd come back to India from Hong Kong on one of my I think biannual visits and figured that MTV had launched there and was doing a pretty shitty job. And I don't know, I think one of those complete fits of arrogance when I went back to Hong Kong, I picked up the phone, called MTV in Hong Kong, said, "Can I speak to who's and help, who runs the channel?" And poor Chinese receptionist put me through to some American guy, and I said, "Look, I don't know who you are. My name is so and so. I just went back to India and saw your channel. It's really a bunch of shit. It's complete crap. It's bullshit, right?" And the guy said, "Oh, okay, well, why didn't you come and tell me about it?" Right? So I made an appointment to go see him, and I just told him why I thought, by this time it was more like, okay, what am I supposed to do? So when I met him and he says, "Okay, I agree with you. Now tell me what to do." And sure enough, I had no solutions. I said, "Okay, I'm going to come back." So I went back, called a friend of mine, and we said, "Okay, this is how we need to reposition the channel." And one of the things that we did was we said, "Talk in the language of the people. Let's talk in English. Don't talk in English. Don't talk in Hindi. Talk the language of the street." So the decline and fall of the language in India, which is the entire English thing, now there's Tanglish and Kanglish and everything. I'm kind of partially responsible for that. Of course, later on I came back and ran Channel V. So in my mum's eyes, I'm completely responsible for the decline of Indian culture in the last 20 odd years. It's me, man. I mean, I have destroyed this country single-handedly. Anyway, so I did okay there, and Ogilvy was fun, advertising was fun, but I kind of figured out that I was still kind of selling somebody else's product. They were getting rich, and so anyway, decided that I was really entranced by the internet. I read about it in 1993 in a Wired magazine. And I went to my managing director and said, "Dude, we've got to, at the head of Ogilvy Asia, and said, we've got to do something online." And I said, Ogilvy, I think even today they don't know what they want to do online. They keep jerking around that even 20 years later, 20, 30 years later. Right? So anyway, I said, "Okay, guys, these guys don't get it." So I then discovered in another issue of Wired magazine that somebody had started an internet-based ad agency. I said, "Man, that's crazy." So these were three guys from Apple Computer I read about. So I figured out their email address, and then this was before the browser existed. So I was doing Unix chat and Pine and Elm and all that, if you remember that stuff. Got in touch with them, and they apparently, I didn't know this, they were really thrilled to hear from some big brand guy because I was from Ogilvy. And those were three guys who had never run advertising firm who started advertising. They said, "Oh, it is a brand guy who got in touch with us." They said, "Hire him before he says no." So they hired me sight unseen, right? So here's me, a college dropout, getting H-1B visa to go to the US to be a creative director at a digital ad agency. Of course, I went there, I wanted to do consumer stuff, they wanted to do B2B stuff, and finally they said, "Do whatever you want," right? And so I read about this small startup in Seattle. Or before that, I read about this small startup in Silicon Valley that was, building a new portal. And I kind of called the CEO and said, "You need to do something." And he said, "There's no money." I said, I'll do it." So that was good fun. I went and met with Jerry Yang, David Philo, who, it was crazy. So I'd gone in my, tie, jacket, and these two guys were in their like chuds and t-shirt, man. So I kind of figured out a different kind of that. Ended up redesigning Yahoo, defeating Exide. I learned, how to build websites back then. We did pretty well. Yahoo had a huge IPO. And then there was this other small company in Seattle, run by a guy who'd come from New York, and they had 6, 7 people. They were doing something interesting. Again, I went to the management and said, "Look, I want that account." They said, why do you go up with these guys who have no money? I mean, you must be off your nuts." I said, "No, it's fun. Let's go do it. Only as long as it's profitable." I said, "Yeah, I promise I'll make it profitable." So wrote to these guys, landed up, and met a guy called Jeff Bezos, right, who was sitting at his desk. His desk was a table, upturned table, and so then started working with them. It was great fun, and among the things, I mean, at some point we had to, later on we had to resign the account because we were doing 15 campaigns a month and we were going crazy, completely crazy, right? We learned a heck of a lot from Jeff. And maybe that's a different podcast another day. But one of the really interesting things I learned from him, I remember I was sitting at breakfast with him one day, and he was giving me some gyan on advertising. So here I am. By then, I had probably spent, I think, 10, 12, 14 years in advertising. And here's a guy who had like spent 2 months in the business telling me, and he was actually talking sense. So finally, I looked at him and said, Jeff, how the hell do you know this stuff? And he looks at me and said, Mahesh, I own a bookstore. And then I understood what he meant was that whenever he didn't know something, he bought every damn book on the subject, read it, and then he became the gyani on it and gave everybody gyan on it, right? So I thought that was a really nice thing. So that told me immediately that, if this dude who's a computer programmer can learn more about advertising than most of the people very quickly by reading books, maybe it's all right to be a college dropout and do whatever. So anyway, so I helped design the Amazon website, launch it, and so on and so forth. And long story short, my agency went public. We did well. I joined a startup, e-com startup in Seattle, which did well. Which got acquired by Intel. I had no desire to work with Intel, even though it would make my damn grandparents' dream come true. Ayo, paiyan Intel. I said, no. I broke their heart again, and I got hired out of there to come back to India to run the rival to MTV channel called Channel V, and I came back as a CEO. And of course, I did lots of stuff there on Channel V that it launched a lot of products, TV channels, etc. Double the share, cut the losses, etc. Till it was acquired by Star TV. By which time I was investing in startups, so I learned a little in the US on how to mentor and guide startups. And as a bit of a marketing guy, I still think I'm a bit of a marketing guy. I still, one of my big, more fun investments, it doesn't make me a lot of money, but it's profitable, etc. is a marketing firm called Pinstorm, which is, I think, India's larger digital marketing firms. And I just get involved because I love that stuff. So I'm a marketer, and I've not had a straight life, dude. I mean, if you're looking for a straight, narrow career path, guess what? I've directed films that have won me some stuff at Cannes. I've won a Best Director. Not too many people have won a Best Director, Best Venture Capitalist, and have launched satellites. So, what can I tell you? I have zero career path. So it's like being Brownian motion in some random sort of a way. But it's been good fun, and I hope to have a lot more fun going forward.
Obviously, you've gone through so much. Your life journey has been completely inspirational. I mean, because you I think it's got all the ingredients of, you know, whoever wants to be big needs to take those ingredients: bold, resilient, passionate, uh, uh, curious, and you, I think you've learned from life, right? Like Jeff Bezos, he's gone and taken books and he's learned. So I believe the future is not the traditional way to learn things. The future is non-linear. The future is, being curious, because I think if you're curious, you don't need to have these huge college degrees, right? Because it's the desire and passion. If you have that, and you will carve your path forward, right? So coming to today, I think, we are all quarantined at home. We self-quarantined, obviously, because of COVID-19, and I believe it's going to impact us in a big way. Obviously, it's already impacted us. It's going to impact the economy. It's going to impact the startups. It's going to impact the common people, because I believe there's daily wage laborers. They are the ones who are going to be mighty impacted. Till now, we don't really know the complete impact of COVID-19. What's going to happen next? Right now, there's all these loose information which has been coming. There's Anthony Fauci, who's the infectious disease head of US. There's Dr. Zelenko, who's saying that he's repurposing drugs for cure. But we don't really know what's going to happen. If the virus is going to mutate, will the world be anything like what it was right now, or will be completely different? We don't really know. So if you can share in your views, what do you think is going to be impact of COVID-19 on the economy, startup, and everyone in general? How is it going to impact us?
Sure, and of course I'll preface all of this by saying I don't know, man. I'm a class 12 class. What the hell do I know? But if you're asking me, I'm happy to share what I think. Right? I'm no expert, but it's all right. You asked, so here are the consequences of you asking. Many people are waiting for this to get over to get back to life because, but I actually think life won't be the same. It's going to be a different world we get back into. In several ways, it's a different world, like you said, for the poor laborers who had hands-on jobs that somebody did immediately at that point, because hands-on jobs can be very, very difficult, right? And different. Uh, the companies that will win in the long term are those who invest in robotics. So there are people who build houses by hand. At some point, you would take prefabricated things that were kind of, put together somewhere and assembled somewhere else, right? Uh, so while they're going to face a huge brunt of the stress because the things that they were told they were good for, which is working with their hands, will become less and less important because at some point uh, you will want to actually look at saying, look, I went through that, I don't want to go through this again. What is it I can do without having to necessarily expose myself? See, one way to look at this, and I'm not going to talk about a conspiracy theory, right? But assume, and just for the sake of argument, this is not true, and I don't believe it's true, but assume that uh, COVID-19 was a product launched by a startup in China, all right? And the world has to cope with it. Now imagine what? So it's not just a startup. So suddenly it impacts your political systems, your health systems, your economic systems, and it could well have been largely a startup, but I'm not saying it is, right? So to cope with it, you've got to literally change the way you live. So there is an extraordinary scope for disruption out here in terms of somebody doing this. So you talk about AI and the power of artificial intelligence. And that's a small piece. I mean, look at this, a simple thing, a disease that actually is less virulent than malaria has shut down the world. All right. So the one end, the people who will suffer are the hands-on workers, the laborers, the maids, the gardeners, and so on and so forth. The contrary to that is there are people who will build large numbers of automated systems to be able to go past that. But let's talk about people in the service economy because we think we might be, yeah, certainly we are better off than the hands-on laborers who are not trained, who don't know how to, cope with the new normal. But there's a lot more coping that people that we know, people like us have to do, people like people in the startup business have to do, and that coping is around a very simple fact. So I've been spending a few time on phone calls, a little time on phone calls with potential candidates for some of my industry companies. Now the interesting thing is, Eddie, I don't even know where you're based. I mean, you're here at the other end of my screen. I don't know where you live, but I've been talking to candidates who are in Europe, who are in actually South America, Central America, India, Nepal, etc., Singapore. And it doesn't matter, you're at the other end of the screen. So suddenly you sit back and say, hey, if I'm hiring people, now I could be in an advertising agency I founded in India. I could be a data processing firm in Prague. I could be whoever, anywhere, right? Why do I have to necessarily need somebody who's here? If you figure out over the last 2, 3, 4 weeks and however long, how much long this is going to last, that you can actually work pretty okay with people somewhere around the world. Suddenly, the way you change, the way you hire is going to be different. The place you hire is going to be different. For those people are now look at it on the converse side. If you're looking to find a job, you're looking to get top dollar for this, let's say this recording, etc. Why do you necessarily need an Indian sponsor, right? Where is your market? So essentially, what we've suddenly done is we've dislocated your location, and if everything was if the earlier real estate mantra was location, 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 probably the new mantra is dislocation, 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 because you've actually broken things out by saying you don't need to have an office there in one place, you don't need to have the customers around your office, etc. So you spread, you suddenly say, okay, fine, I have a global reach, I can sell to customers anywhere, I can hire people anywhere, and so literally, we are now the companies I've invested are doing business around the world by having people that we've never actually met in person who are doing stuff, and we get on a call like this once a day to get stuff done. So this is an extraordinary change. So this actually means in some ways that there's a lot more threat if a client, if a customer in the US, say, wants to buy a satellite or wants to hire an advertising firm or whatever, uh, why would he necessarily choose one down the road? Because he's not going to meet them. He's going to meet them on a call like this. And maybe he's going to meet them once in a quarter, and you can get on a plane once in a quarter, right? So the people in the high, in the US, for example, in the advertising business, a firm will not work for $25,000, $30,000 a month in retainer. Well, you can get great Indian companies who will work at a third the price or half the price in the US. So there's a huge potential here for companies in India, in Vietnam, in the Philippines, and China, etc., to be able to suddenly service first world needs, right? So there's going to be a flattening of this. Well, if you live in San Francisco, you've got to charge top dollar things. So I think we're going to see some significant changes in the services business, in the manufacturing business, and each of these is going to be driven by other tools. So suddenly, you've heard from the guy who runs Zoom, who says, well, in October I was doing 10 million calls a day, now I'm doing 200 million calls a day. 20x in 5 months, right? Who'd have thunk it, right? So I think you're going to see extraordinary changes out here, and COVID is just one way. And the way to deal with this is just not going to be business. You might need to change the way your politics works. You need to might change the way your government works. If this was a startup, if hypothetically COVID was a product of a startup, you will now have to, how do you counter that? You don't put back a disease and kill others. Right? So essentially now the way business and government and society have to really work much closer together than they ever did before. If at one point in India, some business stays away from government, saying, let them do what they want, I'll do what I want. Now suddenly you've got to work together. So, there's this crazy amount of cooperation. And I believe that in this entire race between, is a socialist kind of mindset going to work or a capitalist kind of mindset supposed to work? I think I've been swinging. When I was young, I was a hard out Ayn Rand capitalist, and I've kind of swung a little more to the center. And I now believe that it's a social responsibility of business and of, so everybody is linked together in a way that business is now part of society and part of government, and government is part of business and part of society. I mean, so if hospitals in the United States want hydroxychloroquine, HCQS, right, which the doctor you named suddenly said is a miracle cure, which by the way it's not. So because I have friends in the US who kind of figured it's not a miracle cure, right? But Trump believes any nonsense, so he figured that the supply was shut down. So the hospitals figured the supply was shut down. So what did they do? They went to Trump, who called Modi, and who lifted a ban. So suddenly, guess what? Within a day, the business makes a call to the government makes a call to uh, the government makes a call to business here, and boom, trade happens. So this never used to happen before. The ability for this way of business, government, and society to work closely together never was there. I think we're going to see a sea change in what happens out here. Businesses will need to be a lot more socially responsible. Again, strangely, that Facebook was really slammed long before this, but now it's been in some way, they've kind of redeemed themselves by just being the mode of conversation for like a billion people out there. Even though I still think they suck as a company, right? And I don't own any Facebook stock, and but at this point, suddenly people are figuring out that every uh, just like every business has corporate social responsibility, government has business social responsibility, and citizens have responsibility to both. So all these three elements are going to intertwine much more closely together.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Rightfully said. I think more than ever, I think we are completely linked together, and it had to be a catastrophe like COVID. So yes, I mean, you rightfully mentioned at this point in time, the technology is driving things forward, like remote working, right? I mean, there's virtual reality. Just imagine a world. I mean, you don't really need to go to work. Instead of this 2D platform which we are working on, like a Zoom, you strap on a headset, like a VR headset, and then you are inside an office. For example, there's this company called EXP Reality. It's a real estate business. It's a $1 billion. It's a unicorn. It's based out of US, and they've got their staff working from all America. All that they do is they have a office built in virtual reality, and the agents get together online whenever they have to meet, connect, and they connect with each other. And that I believe is the future of work, where you don't really need to travel, get stuck in your travel for 2 hours and things like that. Productivity will go up, and I mean, it had to be like something like COVID-19 to push this. So do you think in some ways this is a double whammy? What I mean by double whammy is, at this point in time, automation has been largely responsible for all. It's saying automation is going to take away jobs, right? And it's already doing that in some ways. There are a lot of job loss which is happening due to automation. And then there is this COVID-19, right? So are we prepared for what's going to come next?
Okay, so there are two. I mean, let me unravel that. There are 2, 3 questions out there. I mean, uh, so once you want, I'll talk about the virtual reality. I'll talk about automation, and I'll talk about next, right? So, my view on any technology is a little more tempered, right? So, there are people who say everything will become that way, and I figured out historically, for example, television didn't kill radio. Neither of them killed the newspaper. The internet didn't kill all of them. So all of these coexist. So we can do a VR meeting right now. So even for example, when we do get onto Zoom meetings or Google Meet meetings, etc., a regular meeting, most people come on with, for example, their audio on and their video off, right? So in fact, curiously, a couple of guys have been declining video meetings. Say, look, I'll do it, but I'll do it in audio because I haven't shaved or whatever. I'm not ready, etc. So an audio meeting is basically a conference call, really, right? So I think there's going to be a mix of all of this. So while there will be some people who will be on the bleeding edge saying, yeah, my avatar will interact with your avatar in VR. That's fine. But I do believe for a lot more people that may be a few, and that's okay. But it's not going to necessarily give you any enhanced, uh, you know, ability to work together, other than just a discussion like this, that where I can see your face, or I can. It's the first time I'm seeing you today, and but with the people I work with regularly, I don't need to see their face. It's okay. Occasionally, I can come on and do something, but it's easiest for me to just shut the video, put my feet up, and not worry about what my background is like. Oh my God, can you see the towels hanging somewhere, etc., or whatever. People don't have a separate office, right? So my belief is that nothing is going to kill anything else. So yes, VR will find a place out there, but it will not replace anything. We will increase the number of options out here. So that was the answer to my personal take on your first question. To your second question, in terms of automation, well, the truth is, automation has been making people jobless for centuries, right? So when Gutenberg invented the press, he put out the people who were transcribing the Bible, right? But it didn't kill anybody. They went and found other jobs and higher level jobs and so on and so forth. So when uh, uh, you had the harvester, which was built by Sir Jethro Tull, it didn't put farm laborers out of business. They figured out something else to do, and so on and so forth. So essentially, we always cope. We always cope with anything that automation throws at us. Now the point is, are you going to cope well? Or are you going to cope badly? If you don't prepare, you're going to cope badly. But you will cope, you'll not die. And if you prepare, you can cope well. So what is this preparation? Well, we must prepare for the fact that a heck of a lot of menial labor or manual labor is simply going to be taken away. I mean, look at it in front of you. Today you have a Zomato or a Swiggy coming by, delivering your meal and gone away. So you don't even know which restaurant made it. In many cases, they're what's called a cloud kitchen, which means the restaurant doesn't exist in reality. It's built out of a kitchen which has a brand name that floats in midair. So you're kind of abstracted away from who makes what and who delivers what where. That's going to happen a lot. So what does it mean for the future of restaurants? It doesn't mean they're going to die. It means that there's going to be multiplicity of these. So cloud restaurants will survive, and others will survive, and others will survive, and so on and so forth. Each will have to redefine what they do, but each will find a role if they're smart enough, and people are smart enough to do that. So with the rise of AI and automation, what's going to happen? Yes, there will be a lot more harvesters. There will be a lot more robot cooks in our kitchens. There'll be a lot more, whatever you want, robot maids. It's called a vacuum cleaner, I guess, a robot maid or a washing machine, etc. They will be there, but it doesn't. Now, what are our choices as a country? We can go badly, which means we don't train people. We basically give them vocational training instead of theoretical training, instead of information technology training, because we believe vocational things are right. But what happens when your vocation goes for 6? What is the use of training how to cook? And the jobs have gone because everything's gone to cloud kitchen. What happens? If all we've learned is how to type. Once upon a time, when I was growing up, there used to be this course called stenotypist. You learned how to type. You learned how to use a QWERTY keyboard. Well, guess what? That doesn't exist anymore, right? So I think the way to go badly is to not train your children and not train your adults for this, right? And the way to cope well is to train and to have the options of training available. You don't have to train. I mean, one of the really cool things that's coming out of COVID is I've actually downloaded a couple of dozen free courses that I just started taking 2 already, right? To learn stuff that I didn't think possible. I mean, it's free. What do I have to lose other than some hours of my time? And it's okay. And I just want to learn stuff, and the equivalent of what the Bezos thing, which is don't know something, go read up about it and learn. And that's, it's a reasonably enough approach for anybody to take, which is, okay, I don't know, and so there's means of learning, so learn it, damn it. I mean, it's not necessarily the government's responsibility. You can buy some courses and make it free, but learn, damn it. And that's what's going to make you cope better. So this future is coming, job losses are coming, you don't fight it. At one point, I remember the banks used to go on strike saying, we don't want computers in banks. Can you think of a bank without a computer today, right? And that wasn't too long ago, right? Today, everything about a bank is about, I don't want people at all. I just want it on my app, on my phone. I don't even, when was the last time you went and actually met your bank manager? So we're increasingly seeing industries washed away and disrupted, but the functions remain. And what it means for people, if you're a parent, is, well, not just your kid will learn, but please, you got to learn, right? And I'll tell you why that's important for a very different reason. And this is interesting. So my dad retired at about 52 or 54. I think he joined the services when he was 22. After 30, 32 years of service, he's like, yeah, retired. So I always thought, I would retire at 52 or 54 or whatever. And that was last year. When I went, on my birthday, I looked at it and said, what's wrong with me? I thought I should have retired by now. I turned 54. But instead, I think 6 months before that, I had started 3 companies. So I said, why am I doing this? What's wrong with me? Why? Yeah, I'm okay. I'm lucky. I'm fortunate and privileged that I've turned out okay, and I don't need to necessarily work for a living. I'm all right. But why am I doing this? Why can't I retire and do nothing? And the strange and interesting answers hit me, which is that in my dad's days, they retired you at 52, 54, 56, because they kind of figured, what, back then, the average life expectancy was 65, 61, 65, 69, and they said, yeah, let's give this man 10 years and he's going to pop it anyway, so that was what the entire thing was. In fact, if among us South Indians, we have this thing called a Shashkit Purti, which is at the age of 60, people do a puja and say, dude, you're done, now you may die, right? So we have that in our culture. 60 is a big thing, right? But guess what? What my dad and your dad and everyone's dad and mom did and made sure for all of us is that we got vaccinated, we got injected, we don't eat the crap that we used to, right? And because of that, guess what? Within our generation, our average life expectancy has gone from 61 to 87. And it will now go to, in the next 10, 15 years, to 1995. So half of us will live to be 95 years old. And if you live to be 95 years old, you have no business retiring at 54. All right. So forget about your kids. Your kids will manage. What the hell are you going to do from the age of 54 to the age of 94? Right. So that's more important that you learn. You stop thinking your life is over. You're in early middle age at 54, right? You'll be useful till you're 75, right? And that to me is a huge opportunity that not many see. It's not just about retraining children. Kids will learn. They will cope. The problem is, will you? Or will you still be stuck saying, yeah, I will bitch and whine, whatever, and hate the world? Because you have to be a useful individual, and you can be to the age of 75, 80, 85, 90. And I think that's an extraordinary thing. So you will now have, like never before, you will have somebody who's 80 years old in the market, while their kids who are 50, 55 years old are in the market, while their kids who are 30, 35 years old in the market, while their kids are in schools. We have 3 generations who will work together at the same time. It's never happened in history before. It's going to be an enormous change.
Right, yeah, completely. So I'm with you on that because so I believe that the future is going to be super awesome because I also believe that we're the cusp of the fourth industrial revolution where all of these technologies, I don't think the world has ever seen anything like this. What's going to happen right now? So earlier when you said obviously the technology, I mean, it keeps on changing. There's automation. We've seen this through ages. The machines come in, the job losses happen, but I don't think anything like that has happened now. Why I say that is because we have technology like artificial intelligence. We have technology like synthetic biology, where we actually tinkering with the source code of life, the DNA. With CRISPR-Cas9, we can create design a babies. There are the biggest companies in the world. Google has an offshoot called Calico, which is working on age reversal. Yeah, they're talking about they're saying death is a disease which can be curable. So it's not just Google. There's human longevity. There's Aubrey de Grey, David Sinclair, who's working on age reversal. Now, so that's one part of thing. Then there's this artificial intelligence, which I believe it's in such a nascent stage. Already have a phone which is pretty smart, but then I believe that I think in another 30 years, or maybe I shouldn't be giving timelines, but I think maybe 30, 35 years, we'll be seeing machines getting really intelligent. What I mean by that is it's got to be possibly as intelligent human, and as soon as you have a force, another force, which is as intelligent as human. I mean, we are not very good at intelligence. What I mean by that is, I mean, all our biases are being built onto the machines, right? So how is the machine going to treat us is going to be a big, big, big question. So anyway, you are also an investor. You got a company called Seed Fund, right? 2008 downturn. when the downturn happened, some of the biggest investors, the smart investors, saw that as an opportunity and became overnight millionaires, right? Right now, we are in that kind of situation. Most of the investors are saying that we're going to stay away from investing at least from 1 quarter or 2 quarter because what are your, are you going to still invest? What's your future plan for seed fund?
Okay, Seed Fund is a fund I started with my partner Praveen Gandhi, and the we raised the first fund we raised in '96, the second we raised in 2010, 2011, and that's still continuing. But I've actually got a new fund that I've in the process of raising and closing, and I've been working on it for the last 2 years. Something it's called Exseed, which is after seed, so it's Exseed. And it might interest you. It's only the second fund in the world to invest in space. We are a space-focused fund, a space tech fund. Uh, uh, we want to work and invest in various parts of the space ecosystem. We already have 4 or 5 investees. One of our companies is the only Indian company, private company, to go to space, right? So we have 2 satellites that we launched. We launched one in December 2018 on SpaceX. We launched one, I think, 11 months ago on ISRO. We had another launch, 2 more launches actually this month, but I think they've got pushed out because of COVID, and we don't know when exactly we launch. But so we make satellites. We have a company that makes satellites. We have a company that makes ground systems and runs 2 of them already ground stations. We have a company that makes satellite communication, programmable communication systems. And a bunch of them. So we've already got 4 or 5 companies that we've looked at, and we're lining up to invest in another 2025 out here. So I'm actually investing. I think it's a great time to buy, and not just from the fund point of view, but also from my personal point of view. I think it's a great time to buy. I'm personally buying, and I've been. So these are things more than it's not just money. It's really also the fun of kind of being a contrarian. And everybody, the best time to when everybody is zigging, you should be zagging. So it's actually you can call it bold. In fact, you described me as bold. I don't know. Bold is one of those judgments you pass in retrospect. While you're doing it, the judgment everybody passes is stupid, right? So when everybody's running one way and one guy's running the other way, you say, look at that stupid guy, right? And only like 5 years later, you say, look at that bold guy. Right? So stupidity is, boldness is stupidity 5 years later, in some cases at least. So I'm bullish on space. That's really the area that I want to be focused on for some time. Again, what do I know about space? I've just been reading a lot, man, for the last 2.5 years. We figured out enough to build satellites, to build them in India, to have a private company build them in India, which has never been done before, to launch them, which has never been done before. And we figured out the laws, the rules, the regulations, and I remember having a discussion with somebody who was part of a $600 million company saying, we've been trying for 15 years to launch a satellite from India. I promise you'll never launch it. You're like so, and 2 months later we launched. And I said, dude, I don't want to talk to you, right? So I think there'll be a bunch of guys who figure out ways around it. But I'm actually bullish on space as kind of one of the things that I'd like to spend some time doing something for a few reasons. One, it's interested me since I was a kid. Two, it's real now. I mean, if you plot the path of history from Sputnik in 1957 and all the way to 2017, right, 60 years later, it never went more than 100, 200 satellites a year. But then 2018 was 600, and 2019 I think was 1200 or 1800 or 1500, and 2020 should be 2000 plus. So we're actually in that complete hockey stick curve in space when it comes to affordability. Today, for example, we sell satellites. I mean, this company that I'm an investor in sells satellites, entire systems, including launch, for less than 10 crores, right? It's unprecedented. If once you thought satellites cost thousands of crores, and here's somebody launching perfectly functional satellites at a fraction of the price while making money doing it. So I think there's going to be a significant amount of investment. So this is just one part, and in various parts, in every one of the things that you talked about, and a lot of stuff is going to be at the confluence of things. So once you had to specialize, and now you have to suddenly figure out how these specializations come together. So if you're doing, gene splicing using CRISPR, you have to understand biology, and you have to understand mathematics, and you have to understand computation. these things were never typically taught together, right? If you're looking at, for example, emergency responses to pandemics, like what everybody is doing right now, you have to again understand biology. You have to understand log curves and exponential curves, and you suddenly have to understand what R0 is and R1 is. And you left all these things you taught behind in statistics class a long time ago, saying, I'm never going to learn this, right? So I think even the way you teach is going to be a little different. We had this entire thing called this is biology and this is physics, and this is mathematics, and never two these shall meet. But guess what? They meet all the time in every place, and that's what's going to be interesting. It's a challenge on our education system. It's a challenge on how you bring up your kids. And I think when you teach people look at things as a system, and maybe I think the IB schooling does a better job of it than CBSE, etc. But CBSE helps you pass the exam and get into IIT. You become a drone, and I think it's only this multidisciplinary thing where you kind of say, you know what? Yeah, I understand how a cell works, and I can build a robot, and I can do basic math to put it all together to try to do something. And very few people have that wide range of skills, and this is really interesting because we were brought up in some ways to be specialists. I mean, you always say, oh, my grandson is a super neurosurgeon. He's one of the top three in the world who specialize in the upper left lobe in that 3 millimeter part of the brain. Anything there, he is the world's best guy in that. So because that was a room for super specialityness. And now I think it's kind of much more room for somebody who's laterally multiply qualified. I mean, somebody who says, okay, I can get an synthesis. I figure out what this is doing, and I can synthesize this together and look at it as a system and try to solve this as a system. Cross-discipline. I think it's a great time, friend. It's good fun.
Yeah, I think it's the best time. So like you, I'm also being I'm a college dropout. So every day I'm learning. Every day I'm trying to figure out these new things and how it's going to change and transform mankind, right? And I believe that we're in the cusp of the end. I think these traditional systems, I believe it's going to collapse. I mean, stuff like your education, the way I think we educate ourselves, the rote learning method, I feel it's going to collapse. It's going to make way for non-linear education, non-linear personalized education, where I think if you see in the traditional classrooms, there are these 40, 50 students. They're sitting, there's a blackboard, and everybody is looking over there, and everybody is just learning that one simple thing. When the world around is so beautiful, you can just learn so many other things. So as an investor, so what's the top criteria for you? When you go to invest.
Okay, so I have a different set of criteria. So my criteria is again based on something I've noticed a little while ago. So in the world that we all grew up in the world of Hindustan Unilever and Procter and Gamble, which were or Coca-Cola, etc., right, which were like the world's leading companies not too long ago. Typically, if you look at saying, okay, how do you create a winner in that space? You say, okay, all right, so if I want another consumer products company, I have to go up against Unilever, and which basically means, oh my God, I have to, they have 50 varieties of soap and 40 varieties of shampoo and 30 types of hair dyes and so on and so forth, and or toothpaste. And the most market share you could hope for, I think it was, if you had 10% market share, you're like, oh my God, that's the biggest brand in the category. I mean, look at cars. Volkswagen Group, which includes Volkswagen, Porsche, Skoda, Bentley, and Audi, right? All together have 17% or 18% market share globally, altogether, right? And they're the biggest, in the world. And so everybody else is like 15%, 12%, 11%, 9%, 8.5%, 8.2%, and so on and so forth. So in that world that we grew up in, being a market leader meant, that there's, you had a lot of chance, a lot of possibility, and there could be 25 companies, all contenders. So think about it right now. For example, in the world of cars, you can think of 20 car brands, right? In the world of soft drinks, you can think of 10 soft drink brands, and so on and so forth. But something really, a huge amount has changed. So that's the world of 20 years ago. But look at the world that has started in the last 5 years. So let's move from cars to electric cars. How many brands can you think of? Maybe two, right? Go from soft drinks to energy drinks, and how many brands can you think of? Maybe one or two, right? And so essentially, 70% of the electric car market is Tesla and a couple of guys fighting with the rest. 55% of I think the energy drink market is Red Bull, and everybody's fighting over the rest. Monster has some share, and everybody else is fighting over the rest. And this dominance is becoming even greater in the online world. I mean, we used to be told, man, that hey, you know what, the online world, there's no competition, there's no barrier to entry. It's okay, man. Everybody has a chance. But guess what, right? Google has 93% market share globally. Nothing stops you from launching a search engine, but it's just that they won that market. They have 90% in videos with YouTube, and they have 98% in maps with Google Maps. And similarly, if you look at like WhatsApp has 75% in mobile messaging, or Twitter has 100% market share in microblogging. You can't even name a rival to Twitter. Facebook has 75% in net. So essentially, now you're talking from that once you came from a world where you would win at 7% to a world where the winner has 75%, right? It's kind of a winner-take-all world. So taking this long circuitous route to come back to your point, what kind of startups will I invest in? I want to invest not in the 18th drug company or the 14th soft drink company or the 18th soap company, but in some company in a sector that's ideally not defined that can be the number one or number two in that sector. In my mind, I like to form these shorthand things. So for me, the world is going to be a 99.9 world, which basically means the first guy will get 90% share, the second guy gets 9% share, the third guy gets 0.9% share, and I want to be either the first or the second in that world, or I want my companies to be that. So you might think it's risky, but actually it's the safest thing to do. It's much riskier if you go and try to launch another soft drink or another soap, because it's very hard for you to fight against Unilever and others there. But it's much easier if you want to do something nobody else does, and you can take 70, 80, 90% market share there. So to answer your long question short, I have a bias towards things that are not yet sectors and towards companies that have the potential to create a sector and dominate it, right? And we can talk more if you want about how do they dominate it, but I just wanted to give a long story short in terms of what kind of businesses am I looking at.
Lovely. So what's the future for Exseed and Seed Fund?
Okay, so seed fund will probably, it has another year to go, and we'll figure out what happens out there, whether it extends or we do seed fund 3 or not. Is still up in the air, and but I'm in the middle of doing. We don't know yet. It'll take another year or so to decide that, or who knows, right? But in the future for Exseed is really to become. I guess we are only the second fund in the world that invests in space. There's another British fund, I think. They've stopped investing, and there's another fund, an American fund after us. So it's early days, and I get, I get the same feeling. And with Seed Fund One, it was 2006 when we 2006 when we invested in Redbus and Carvalho, long before anybody thought that there was a consumer internet, right? We were investing in companies back then. It seems the same way now. I love it. It's of course it's a challenge to get investors to believe that this is where the world is going, but that's really it's okay. So the guys who do the safer stuff will get a lot more money, and that's okay. That's okay by me, man. That's not the big motivator for me. Money is okay, but it's the fun of doing stuff. And to me, especially with whatever's happening right now, I would be, it would be very difficult if I was doing yet another local delivery or local, feet on street kind of a thing, right? Because given all this, the world is actually coping pretty okay with businesses happening. We are working. Yeah, the GDP is down maybe 2%, but that's okay. It's down from 100 to 98. It's not like down from 100 to 0, right? So it basically means that we will actually choose a safer way to grow. We will grow more responsibly, which means the way that funds should look at this should be different. So we have, I mean, every fund has its own thesis. I don't presume that Sequoia has a similar thesis, or Anderson has the same thesis. But this is ours, which is find a few guys who will dominate various sectors, see if you can back them and make them dominate them. Because again, really interestingly, and this is something that's interesting, you would think that it takes a lot of money to dominate a sector, but the really interesting thing is WhatsApp had 56 people when it got sold for $21 billion, right? Zoom, which today is valued at 40 billion, has 52 people, right? Uh, uh, 50 people, yeah. I mean, that's like what can fit in like 2 flats in Bombay, right? That company can be worth more than the economy of many small countries. So it actually, the lesson there is it costs very little to create a dominant market leader. You don't, for example, everybody talks about the cost of marketing. And as a marketing guy, one of the cool things I find is that every one of the market leaders I talked about, whether it is Tesla spends nothing on advertising. Red Bull spends nothing on advertising. WhatsApp spends nothing on advertising. Google spends nothing on advertising. YouTube spends nothing on advertising. Facebook spends nothing on advertising. Twitter spends nothing on advertising. While all the guys who are trying to fight them spend loads on advertising, right? So that's the interesting part. So as a marketing and advertising guy, I almost feel like saying, look, if you have to advertise, you're going to lose. If you don't have to advertise, you're going to win. That's like something So, and that's truly bizarre for somebody like me. And I think it's coolly disruptive that I spent a lot of my, early years spending a lot of my clients' money to a point where I say, to win, don't spend money. So I love, finding out I'm wrong, finding out the world has changed, figuring out ways to cope with it. It's just fun, man. I mean, there's so much to discover. I don't have a clear picture of what the future holds, but I think the rules are changing, and it's good fun.
Lovely. It was a complete pleasure talking to you, Mahesh. Thank you for giving time. Yeah. So yes, I mean, my last note, I think space is going to be the big race and the final frontier. And coming back to yes, when you said, I mean, about the economy, I mean, yes, I mean, yeah, and we can overcome everything because I think as humans we are resilient. I think right now what we have taken from here, or what I believe we should take from here is I think we should grow responsibly, right? So thank you, Mahesh. Really, it was a pleasure and honor to have you on Change Our Possible
Nice,
podcast.
man.
Appreciate this. And to my listeners, if you like what you see, please press the subscribe button. And like always, I'm going to leave behind all the details behind of my guest, Mr. Mahesh Murthy, down below, so you can get in touch with him because it's about building a community, helping each other. And now more than ever, I think there's a need to collaborate, come together, and help each other and grow the ecosystem. So thank you.